Alright, welcome back to JavaScript the Basics. In our last lesson, we began to look at algorithms in JavaScript. An algorithm in a computer is a lot like a recipe, and tells your computer precisely what steps to take to solve a problem or reach a goal. The ingredients are called inputs, while the results are called the outputs. In our previous lesson, we looked at an algorithm to determine if all the characters in a string are unique with no repeats. Our question for this lesson is this. Given a string, find the length of the longest word. I'll work you through two solutions. Both of them will involve using a for loop, a conditional statement as we saw in our previous question. However, we'll also use the string method split. We'll take some time to look at the string split method. Last lesson, we looked at the string index of and last index of method. This method on the string will split a string into an array of substrings. You will be able to pass arguments into the parentheses to determine how many substring elements in the array it will turn your string into. So let's take our car from our last lesson, our Honda Civic. When we attach our split method without an argument, we get an array with an element at index 0, the string Honda Civic. When we attach our split method with an argument of an empty string, we get an array that gives every character in the string a substring in the array, including the whitespace. If we attach our split method with an argument of a string with a space, we get an array with two elements, Honda and Civic. Alright, now we have all the tools we will need to head into the lab to find a possible solution. Again, the question is, create an algorithm that finds the longest word in a string. Go ahead and pause the video and give it a shot. Or if you need a little more guidance, hang on for a moment and we'll walk through some pseudocode. We're going to declare a function. This is what we'll pass our string of words into as an argument. This will lead us into the code block. Here we'll use the string method we just learned to split our array into an array of words. Think through what argument you will need to pass into the string method that we just learned. We'll also want to declare a variable that will store the value of the longest string. Just a hint, you'll probably want to start at 0. We'll then create a for loop that will loop through this array that we have turned our string into. As always, that will have 3 statements. We'll initialize the counter, establish our test condition, and update our value. As long as we passed our test condition, we'll go into our code block, which will have a conditional if statement. This will take some brain power, but you're going to be comparing your current index word length to the variable you declared earlier and the value assigned to it. If it is true, when you have finished iterating through your array, you will return the value of the variable handling the greatest length. You'll then want to invoke the function with your string argument. Set your timer for about 10 to 15 minutes. If you solve it fast, great. If you can't get through it, that's fine too. Just make as much progress as possible. It will help the solution connect when we finally get to it. Alright, how'd it go? Let's take a look at a possible solution. We'll start by declaring a function called maxWord. We'll give it a parameter of string, str. This will later be filled with the string argument. Next, we'll go ahead and declare our variable for our array. We will call it words. We'll assign it the value of the str with the split method. In the parentheses, we will put quotes with a space. If we didn't put a space, we would have an array filled with substrings of characters instead of an array of words. This is going to be the array that we will iterate through with our for loop in a moment. Next, we'll declare a variable called biggest word. We'll store the value of the largest word here. We will initialize the value of this variable with 0. Now, we will create our for loop that will iterate through our array that we created called words. We will initialize our value of I to 0, then set our test condition to be that I is less than the length of our words array with our property length. This sends us into the code block. When we come out of the code block, we'll update the value by 1. Inside of our code block, we have an if statement. Within our parentheses, we'll put an expression that if it evaluates to true, we will move into another code block. So if our word at our current index is greater than the biggest word, initially set to 0, Then in the code block, we are to assign that value to the biggest word. So the next time we come up on this expression, we'll compare our current index with our new biggest word. When we have finished going through our loop, we will exit out, and our next section of code will return the number value of the biggest word. So now, let's go ahead and try it out. We will invoke our maxWord function and give it the argument of the string, my favorite day is Friday. Our string split method will turn this into an array of 5 words. We'll loop through this array. Our biggest word is initialized to 0. Our for loop is going to go through this loop. Our conditional statement is going to ask if our current index, at this point 0, which is the string my, whose property length is equal to 2. 2 is greater than 0, so our biggest word is now set to 2. We'll jump back into our code block looking at our conditional statement. Our current index is 1, the string favorite. The property length of favorite is 8. 8 is bigger than the current value for biggest word, which is 2. So we move into the code block, which is assigning biggest word the number value of the length of the current index, 8. We do this for the rest of the loop. Neither day of 3, or is of 2, or Friday of 6 will be larger. When we invoke our function, we will get back the number value of 8 as our biggest number. Alright, I hope that solution was a help to you. Let's go ahead and move through another solution. This time we'll move a little faster. First we'll declare a function called maxWord, and give it a parameter of str, which we will pass our argument. We'll then declare a variable called words, and store in it an array with the string split method on whatever our argument is. What we'll do different this time is instead of declaring a variable called biggest word and assigning it the value of 0, we'll assign it the value of an empty string. We'll then create our for loop just like in the previous solution. When we enter into that code block, our if statement will have an expression that will be different than our previous solution as well. We'll ask if the property length of our current string in the index is larger than the property length assigned to our biggest word variable, which at this point, an empty string would evaluate to 0. So we go back into our code block as before, and the biggest word is now equal to this new string at the current index. We repeat this process through our for loop and have a final string assigned to our biggest word. We then return the number value of biggest word with the length property. Let's go ahead and put in that same string as an argument. There you go. Thanks for joining me in looking at creating an algorithm to determine the longest length of a word in a string. We'll see you in our next lesson for our next question.